Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Happy Sunday. I am so glad to see you all. I want to apologize for my crazy hair, but not really, because this morning the rains were coming down and it was just this nice warm shower. I was kind of trying to figure out, are we doing like late spring showers right now, or are we doing early summer thunderstorms? It might be a little bit of both, but most importantly, I was sitting there in my chair drinking coffee, and my inner child, Aislinn, said, "Hey, we should go play in that." And my teenager said, "Yeah, Mom, why not?" And my grown-up, Aislinn, said, "Absolutely no reason not to." And so we went and played, and me and the dog ran, and we just enjoyed the rain. I literally was thinking to myself as I was standing out there kind of running and playing in the rain that I'm like a flower. That I need the nitrogen-filled rain, and I need the fresh air, and I need to just stand in it. And I just shook my hair. I let my hair get just completely soaking wet. I let myself get completely soaking wet. And I think that when we have these summer rains, it's so good to do that because it's warm. There's no reason not to just get out there and enjoy that. And so I hope for you and your children, the next time that those nice summer rains come, go run around in it. Go get yourself some rain, like a flower, like the beautiful flower that you are. That being said, most of you guys already know that I would love it if I'm going to record this video that we do, this live. I do that every week, and I put it up on YouTube. So if you would please jump over to my YouTube channel after this is over with and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're watching this as a replay recording, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. The rest of you guys that are here with me live right now, jump on, say hi. If you're joining me later, just do #replay, and then I will jump on and say hi and interact with you guys because I love that so very much. Now today, I wanted to kind of look around, do the tour again, talk about rain events, talk about weather events, tropical rains, warm rains, but I also wanted to talk about what's harvesting right now. Particularly, we're in that season where every single day, especially because of how much rain we're seeing, we are going to need to harvest things. Otherwise, all that work that you're doing with the plants is going to end up without as much produce, because the produce is going to grow too big, it's not going to be tasty, and things will happen like this. So here's a good example. I've got this tomato here. It's a celebrity tomato, and I've been kind of letting it go. And normally I might leave it on a little bit longer because it's still a little bit hard. But it's got enough orange and red on it that one of the things that could be a concern for tomatoes that are really well developed like this is that they would split open, and then it wouldn't be really as tasty anymore. And
you're talking about because so much water came down?
Because so much water came down. And then in addition to that, it actually will take away the flavor of it too, so it won't be quite as sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest this tomato, and then when I take it inside, I'm going to let it ripen a little bit more. And the way that I let things ripen, these are terrible shears for cutting on tomatoes. I did such a bad cut. Make sure you have nice, clean, sharpened shears when you're working on your tomatoes. That helps out with not creating damage for them. I'm just popping off the little suckers in between, and that's something that I could do as I go up here. I don't want to cut around with these shears too much on these tomatoes anymore. But here's where you start to see some concern with like maybe blight and stuff like that. I'm not 100% sure that's what's going on with this plant. It looks like it's still pretty healthy. But with this kind of rain, this is where you start to see more and more development of pests and pathogens. The rain helps that stuff hatch, basically, or spread, whatever the deal is. So, because this isn't completely ripe, I'm going to go ahead and put it inside of a brown paper bag that I have inside that has a few tomatoes that are already to the point of ripening, and they interact with each other with the gases that they emit. That helps one ripen next to the other one. And so that's a really good way to ripen your tomatoes if you need to go ahead and take them off the vine. But as you can see, I have all my plants, lots of rain, lots of water for them. And I'm continuing, because of how much rain we're getting and because the temperatures have still been cool, I'm really continuing to access planting. I'm still planting seeds. I'm still planting all my different types of vegetables just to see what I can end up getting out of things. I'm really getting a lot of stuff. these rains, the timing of these rains has actually been really good for our gardens, as long as we're keeping up with them, as long as we're harvesting daily and using the rains to do a lot of weeding, then we're in really good timing to be getting the rain when we're getting it, okay? So one of the things that I've been doing, I went back because of how much rain we're getting. You're starting to see some of that powdery mildew. Now, I don't have any powdery mildew here on this plant because I went in yesterday and kind of cleaned up the bottom rows and pulled out some of those leaves that I could see were getting powdery mildew on it. If I find some other leaves that have powdery mildew, I'll point it out to you. But I'm also having to do some of my own pollinating. I did notice this last week that I have at least one carpenter bee that's probably helping me out with that. But generally speaking, my squash doesn't perform if I don't interact with it and do my own pollinating. And
that's when you use the paintbrush, right?
Correct. And somebody mentioned to me the other day that they weren't getting any pollination because they only had male flowers. Well, that's not exactly how it works. Yeah, there's my little paintbrush. I just, take something. I take the paintbrushes out of my kids' stuff that they're not even using anymore and just use that. So, but most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, most of the squash seeds that you would purchase, especially from the kind of general places that you would purchase seeds from, you're going to get a plant that's going to have both male and female flowers on it. And if you aren't seeing, and so this is a female flower right here. Okay? You can see that it has the fruit on it. This is a male flower. Okay? When you see a female flower open up, that's when you take the pollen from the male flower to the female flower. But oftentimes when the plants are young, they're only producing male flowers. So you just need to give it some time. It's not about pollination yet. Pollination comes when you can see that you have both male and female flowers and you're still not getting large fruit. The fruit's just falling off the vine. Okay?
Reproduction.
Exactly. So, I'm trying to look around here to see. I really did a good job of cutting this stuff back because I wanted to get some of that powdery mildew up out of there and really give some air to my plants, because here's the thing, with these kinds of rains, you don't need to water at all because your squash and tomatoes and things like that are getting more water than they want most of the time. Okay, so the rains are great, just let them be. I'm also harvesting a lot of basil right now, and I've showed you guys I harvest my basil by going in between the two leaves right here, and that's how you keep basil. So right there, like that, see those two main leaves, and then I popped out the little flowering part on top. Now, if you want your basil to grow big, fat, nice leaves and not put on the flowers yet, you have to do that kind of regularly. So it's
smell that basil. The moment that you pulled it off, it just hit me in the face.
This is probably a sweet Italian basil. It's a reseed. It reseeded on its own. I love that. Oh, be careful of that little pretty squash back there. She has feelings. She does. It's true. Okay, so here's another little tomato here. This one's also, I believe, this one's a celebrity too. So celebrities are good bushing tomatoes. These actually, I was very happy to be able to run across these because these are USDA certified organic celebrity tomatoes. So bushing tomatoes that if you live in my area, I purchased these because of the freeze. The freeze knocked me back. And so a friend of mine, Leo Ruiz, has a company called Get Growing, and he purchases his USDA certified organic plants and vegetables and things like that from a grower in Austin. And the celebrities from him have done really, really well this year. And so I'm going to continue to do more of those. I also planted a lot of my own seeds. I just was behind because the freeze kind of messed up my timing with that. So his stuff has given me the benefit of getting ahead while I was continuing to seed my own plants and beginning now to put my own plants in the ground. Now, is it late? Abso-freaking-lutely. It is really late. But these rains, these cool temperatures are benefiting us currently. And if I can keep my tomato plants alive through the summertime, just making sure they have plenty of water, not worrying too much about their growth. If they don't have flowers, set flowers, doesn't really matter in the summertime. It's so hot that I'm just going to keep the plant alive. If I can keep the plant alive, then as soon as the temperatures drop in the fall, whether that's late September or even October, I'm seeing kind of a shift in seasons where our stuff may be shifting around the corner. We'll see how the summer turns out. But in that case, when those temperatures do begin to drop back down again in the fall, I will start to see tomatoes immediately because I have so many beautiful tomato plants that I've taken care of. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. You can see how much growth. I mean, we've got like almost jungle growth going on back here now. It's just overgrown and I'm having a hard time keeping up with it. And then what's happening with that is it's too wet for the squash that I had planted in the back there. So I know you guys have seen me kind of pointing out some of the squash and stuff like that. You can see a little squash right there. It's probably some kind of a pumpkin. I'm not sure what kind. I have to get in there a little closer. I did get squash vine borers, but as you can see, as the rain just kept coming and coming and coming, the plant can't get healthy enough. And sometimes they can get healthy enough, then they'll just grow further away and they'll do okay. But I can tell you that that plant's probably going to die. And that's just part of understanding the specific microclimate that you have in your yard, in your area. My stuff at the farm looks very different than that. And it's not getting this super soggy mess over here.
Are you all done with Brussels sprouts?
Yeah, pretty much. The ones out on the farm are doing really well. This one, I wasn't really happy. I don't know. It started opening before, I mean, I've got some stuff down here that I could probably pop off and use. So I don't know. I didn't really understand this particular variety of Brussels sprouts or how to do it correctly. So I have a lot to learn when it comes to Brussels sprouts. You want to hold these tomatoes?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask.
You like my melon? Okay, so then you can come back here. Just be careful where you're stepping. Kind of a jungle back here now. Now, and point back this direction, and you can see that there's some yellowing squash, another yellowing squash vine. Look right up, actually look right here. See this white stuff all over this yellow vine? That's the powdery mildew stuff I'm talking about. That's just too much water. And look, here's an onion. I'm glad I found this because when they start to look like that, you really need to get them out of there.
Start to look like what?
Well, it's kind of brown and smushy, which means it's just getting too much water. It's not really growing anymore. If we had all that amount of rain and then had dried out and kind of stayed dried out, a lot of these would stay in better condition. But it's been so wet that they just start to get soggy and then they just start to break down and die. And so those are the ones you want to get up out of there. I've left a lot of my, what you would call the green sprouting broccoli. You can kind of see it right there. And it puts on a lot of florets. And this time of year, generally speaking, we probably would pretty much be done with cabbage and broccoli and all that stuff. But our temperatures have stayed pretty nice. I mean, we had 66 just a few days ago. That's really nice for us for May. And because of that, my broccoli hasn't gone to bolt yet. And so I'm just cutting florets off of it every single day. And lots of heads. I'm going to take a head out today, one like this over in the other garden. But I'm just letting things grow in this garden. And this garden, for those of you that are with me on a regular basis, you know that I'm moving. And so we're only here in this garden for a certain amount of time. And I'm really not putting a lot of concern in, how much stuff is growing, how close, and all of that kind of stuff. I'm just tending this space right now, getting what I can out of it, and knowing that at the end of September, I'm pretty much done with this garden, and and my other gardens will be my permanent gardens at that point. So I do pop off all my little cherries kind of early because they turn out really nice and sweet, and I don't want the birds to eat them. Although the birds haven't really caused me many problems this year. I think it's because I have such a nice array of beautiful. I like to watch things. Sorry, I have a nice array of beautiful sunflowers for them to take off of, and so they don't really need to take from my stuff right now. So this is a black cherry tomato, and this one was I think a jazzy tomato or something. It says it's a large red cherry, but they haven't been getting super red. Okay, this is literally a jungle back here, and it's very soggy and wet, but I'm gonna harvest this cabbage head right here because it doesn't look pretty anymore. It's getting too much water, and it also has a lot of aphids on it. Will you hold this stuff for me so I can get down there and cut that? And I like to cut that stem out, and look all those little, what's that? That's just a rock. Do you see all those little pill bugs in there? So I'm gonna cut the stalk because I wanna leave the roots in there. You guys know that I like to leave the roots in the ground because they help with having all of that good. These shears are terrible. I need these to go to Ian so that he can sharpen them for me. If you need shears sharpened, my friend Ian O'Keefe has a whetstone. What's it called? Whetstone? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's whetstone, and he can sharpen our knives for us and sharpen our tools for us. If you need his contact information, just let me know. But he has taken apart my Fiskars and sharpened them for me, several different varieties of Fiskars, and sharpened them for me. And so he can do this garden shear sharpening.
Fiskars is the brand name?
Fiskars is the brand. That's my favorite. That's the ones I use. See, now I'm just going to throw all this stuff to my chickens because you can see all this stuff like aphids and everything like that. But that's okay because I can really clean this thing up and get it back down to just the one nice main head. And then we can use this. I've got several nice heads of cabbage now for us to make some good stuff with. So you just clean it up. That's really all there is to it. And then feed this to your chickens if you have chickens. All right?
Or put it in your compost pile.
Oh yeah, if you don't have that, just put it in your compost. Although with all those aphids on it, you might spray it off before you put it in your compost. Now this corner back here has gotten pretty soggy. So I came out this morning, was kind of looking at see, if you smush the part of your onion right here and it's literally smushed, it's not going to grow anymore. It's not healthy anymore, and it's too wet out here for it to dry out here. So just go ahead and pull those out.
I put a bunch of those smaller onions into a pot of green beans the other night.
Yes, and then you made some really good pork chops with lots of pretty onions too. So, but yeah, you can see, I've got water standing back there again. So this bed would need, if we were going to be staying in this garden, it would need more mulch again. But I'm past the point of developing these gardens anymore.
I'm eyeballing some tiny mushrooms back there, some fungal growth.
Lots of mushrooms always. I've got lots of mushrooms, especially when all this rain is coming. Okay, here's the thing. I grew these yard-long beans, and this is the red noodle. And I actually am going to put a form up today for those of you that buy from me on Aislyn's Overflow of Abundance. I've got a bunch of these, and they're really good for like stir fries, fried rice.
They're very good.
They're good. They're just a good bean, a good long, thick, full of like a nice bean. Okay, and so then you can see that like this squash is looking pretty good. It looks healthy. So hopefully it'll dry out enough. I did take out, I mentioned last week that we needed to take out some of these sunflowers because they will help to spread that powdery mildew, and they'll create too much shade and overcast for it. But I may need to go back in and cut out some more now after this rain again, because they're about to take off even more. If you thought they were big before, now you can see, it's literally, we're walking through a jungle here. Look at my snapdragons that live through the freeze. They're huge. Now this is a sloppy mess back here.
Don't worry, we both have our Crocs on.
Yes. So you can see how much growth is happening over here. The stuff around the edges may die because it's standing in water too long. But this stuff should do well and just continue to keep taking off.
And
it's so wet back here that the squash may all die.
If you've got a low point like we do in this corner, and that we've known that we always did, this is when those elevated hugelkultur beds really pay off, because the bulk of your stuff, I can see, is way up off of the water.
Yeah, I see this squash plant right here. It looks really good. And now it's starting to catch on over here and grow up the trellis. So if I can keep it up out of the water, I may not have issues. Now, if the plant gets unhealthy here, even though it's up out of the water and it doesn't have a ton, then I still could have some sort of an issue with a squash vine borer. But a good pumpkin plant that's healthy, that's binding really well, will just keep growing past that, and it'll grow up in trellis. Look how high this is another one of those yard long. It's trellising all the way up that pole. I think last year one of them tried to connect and jumped over to the tree and connected with the tree, but that was actually the squash. I have had issues with squash in this garden too, and so a lot of my squash died. It never really made it. I only had one squash plant make it, and apparently it only has male flowers on it. So I have this beautiful cucumber plant. This beautiful cucumber plant, you can see it's growing all the way up the fence over there with 0 cucumbers on it because it has nothing but male flowers, I suppose.
Do you get frustrated?
So, do I?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course I do.
When you've put the effort into planting it and watching it grow, and then it doesn't yield the fruit that was the entire point?
I plant a lot of plants, so that frustration isn't really too catastrophic. You know, I would be really frustrated if I didn't have cucumbers growing in other places right now.
Right.
I've had a hard time in this garden with cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, all of that stuff. I pretty much, any of it that I tried to grow here this year, it was just kind of, let's see if it happens. Let's see if it works out. I didn't plant any of my tomatoes in the ground out here because there's no reason to do that, and then they're not going to be healthy enough to make it through the year. But you can see, I mean, for those of you that know, this garden is literally only a year old. I kicked it off last year in January, and now it's like a jungle back here. So I'm really loving it all, and you know, we just manage our spaces the best we can. And like I said, the thing that I would do to remedy this situation back here is put in more mulch, and then that helps to keep moving the water. Like, it might create more of a situation where I then create the runoff that goes into the neighbor's yard and the backyard back there, and basically deciding how much water I want in here and where I'm pushing water to, and using the answer for moving water in your yard is to use mulch, not just put in more dirt. More dirt, because the mulch actually helps you to create the topsoil that helps benefit your land and your property. Helps with freezing, helps with heat of the summer, and helps to create all the life that you're looking for in your soil out there. So if you need to lift spaces up, and this is very typical in urban spaces where, like, my yard floods but that person's yard next door doesn't flood. You know, that kind of thing happens a lot of times. Our yard here has always flooded, and we've had some serious flooding events
to that corner.
To this corner, but then also we had that water main bust back here when the city blew the water lines out with the water tower that's still not open.
No, not open. And they told everyone it had nothing to do with the water tower,
right.
But it did.
There's been a lot of conversation about standing water in your chicken coop, sand, mulch, all of those kinds of things. This is how this was a very low spot. It also has had chickens on it for about 3 years now. This is very healthy soil back here. If I wanted to come in and dig it out and pull some of it out and put it in my garden, it's great stuff. So this has become something that's helpful to me. My chickens, after the water starts to go down a little bit, they'll find a hole, they'll find a hatch of earthworms or a hatch of cockroaches or a hatch of something, and they just go to town on it, and they tear it up, and they love it, and they eat it. So my suggestion to everyone is always going to be, put deep litter in your chicken runs, because it helps to benefit the soil rather than creating a problem on the soil that chickens tend to create when you close them into a permanent space. Now, if you've got pastures and they run in pastures and then go back to a coop at night, that's a completely different conversation. But if you have a permanent run like this that stays like this all the time, then the best answer is to use mulch, because it helps to tend the soil and make life in the soil, and it grows healthy pests and things back there, healthy worms, healthy nematodes, all of that stuff for them to be able to have access to and eat. All right? Okay, that's really all I have for today. I love you guys. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I look forward to seeing all of your pictures of all of your beautiful gardens and your chickens and all of the things you're doing. Have a great Sunday. See you soon. That's Maleficent. Isn't she gorgeous? She's a lovely lady.